Good. Awesome. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Uh, I personally apologize for underestimating how many people will show up. Otherwise, we would have, you know, looked for a bigger room. But hopefully, this will be a good session. You get enough out of it, and you'll enjoy what we're going to do. Uh, Part of this session is essentially forming what we want to do with this series of events. So what I'm going to do is myself and Geoffrey, each of us are going to talk about 5 to 10 minutes, but we want to have a lot of interactions and get a lot of feedback from you, see what kind of questions you're interested in. The plan is to have this series of events once every month, and then cover lots of different AI product related topics. And a lot of it is going to be formed in this session through the feedback that we get from you. So, and I thought maybe a good way to kickstart this is to tell you a bit of a story about what ACE is. Angie talked about it a bit, but I'm going to spend a couple of minutes sort of telling you the story of how ACE started and how it turned into what it is today, and where we're trying to go with it. So is this one? Okay. So essentially, for those of you who don't know what ACE is a series of weekly events that we gather together and read scientific papers in machine learning. And the reason that I started that, I sometimes say it, and it's kind of embarrassing, is that I was too lazy to read papers myself. So, I found a bunch of other people who were interested in it, and, together we've been doing this for a year and a half, more than a year and a half now. And the reason that we started doing that is that although I'm an industry practitioner, it was very difficult for me to keep up with the field. Like this graph that you see here, the black curve is showing an explosion of information over the years. These are the number of AI papers published on Archive Computer Science. The red line over there is assuming that you read one paper every working day. That's a ginormous contrast between these two, let alone, how many of these papers would you actually grab to go deeper into it, to understand it, to reproduce it, to turn it into a product that you use in your business? Probably 2 a year. So we have, 40,000 papers coming out this year, and probably 2 of it goes into production, realistically speaking. Even that's optimistic. So there is a ginormous gap between, the reality of what we are using and the content that we're producing. And I sort of drew an arbitrary line between these two, just to draw attention to the fact that the majority of this knowledge that is being produced is junk. It is not really useful for anything. It is just because, the academic system is kind of broken. The measures are vanity metrics, like the number of papers, so you have to publish. Therefore, you publish junk. So, just figuring out what is junk and what is not is a difficult task. And that's everything that lies above the blue line, which is an arbitrary line there. And then everything below the blue line is kind of probably useful, but like how much of it are we using? Still, not a lot. Which talks to another problem, which is the fact that the research, between research and real life products and applications, there is still a ginormous gap. And that's because of the fact that research is not immediately consumable in industry, but also the fact that we don't really have the right mindset in the industry to consume it. So there are problems everywhere. And sort of the target of this series is going to be, talking about the second problem that I mentioned, which is, how can we, start thinking about the right mindset of using machine learning research in industrial setting, and more importantly, in form of products. So essentially, what I'm going to do a bit of plug here and say that, in Aggregate Intellect, which is the company that runs ACE, one of the things that we are trying to do is to build a platform that, a lot of information that is generated outside, and people are just in the middle of it in this haze of papers and videos and blog posts and everything and code related to these, and it is just completely mind-blowing and overwhelming. And our idea is that we want to build a platform that organizes this information and distill it to something that you can use, and we are building tools based on NLP and graph and such to enable that. But that's not enough, because we also have to fix the other side of the story, because in that graph, what I talked about solves the upper part of that gap, but not really the lower part. So, and with this series, essentially what we're trying to do is to build a community around that idea of how can we fill the lower gap, essentially. How can we go from kind of useful ideas to actual products? I don't have the answers. I have ideas. I'm very opinionated. But the idea is, to get a community of people like Geoffrey and probably some of you in the room who has strong opinions about how this should be done over time, and sort of brainstorm together and figure out how to do this. Sorry, I think our communication is that I press this, then you press that. It's high tech, baby. All right. So as I said, like what we are doing is that we're trying to figure out all of these collaboratively. That's what we've been doing, and that's what we're good at over the past year and a half for scientific content, and now we want to do it for products too. We sort of have been doing this in the following form, that sort of we have a community. Our community is around 700 to 800 machine learning practitioners. It's a very strong community. We have like very, very strong experts in many different areas. Recently, we are doing a lot of training workshops on more advanced topics. But the next stage of what we're trying to do is to go from those concepts, those advanced concepts, to products. And the idea of that is how can we turn those advanced machine learning ideas into products that can actually have business influence. So I'm going to go forward quickly. On this slide, I just wanted to show off numbers. So as I said, we have a community of around 700 to 800 practitioners. A lot of them are from industry. Some of them are from academia. We have a YouTube channel. We live stream all of our events, including the product stream going forward. But from wherever you are, you can watch what's happening in these events. We have a decent followership, and we have turned a lot of research papers into videos that you can watch and understand the concept much better than just reading the paper alone. Anyway, let's go forward. I don't want to take a lot of time. So last night I was trying to, last minute after a lot of procrastination, I was trying to figure out, what to put on these slides. And then I remembered an article, sort of a post that I wrote on KD Nuggets about a year ago, called Machine Learning in Action. The link is down there. And a lot of what I'm going to briefly talk in the next probably 3 minutes is coming from that paper, that article that you can take a look at. So essentially, the idea that I would like to put forward and hopefully get your feedback about it, and Geoffrey will talk more about similar concepts, is how to go from machine learning as a decision support sort of function to something that creates some sort of action, impacts business workflow. And that's a problem that I see a lot in a business. I've worked in a team that had that function over time improved a bit. Is that right, Sank? But I'm sure a lot of you might share similar experiences where you use machine learning to create shiny PowerPoint decks, and that was the end of the story. And that's very cruel. Like, you can do so much more with machine learning. So for about almost a year, I've been a product lead in my team. And I've thought about this problem a lot, how to go from, you know, machine learning that you do in Jupyter Notebook and you do a bunch of things, you create a dashboard or a PowerPoint deck, and that's the end of the story, to something that can actually impact business workflow. And that's a very interesting question on many, many, many levels. Like a few days ago, I was talking to a friend who was telling me about this interesting ideas around how you can talk about, machine learning and how it impacts, macroeconomics from a system engineering point of view. Like if you put machine learning into a system, it is connected to a bunch of other systems, and this is going to trickle down into all of these systems, and it's going to affect them. So, and like how is that going to affect all of these systems? People are thinking about it, they are modeling it, and a lot of us don't even think about it. We're like, oh, I'm going to use deep learning instead of XGBoost, and that's going to be fantastic, but why? So I'm going to very quickly go through 5 problem statements that I think are big and not enough people talk about it. And then I'm going to pass it to Geoffrey, who's going to talk about bigger picture stuff than what I'm talking about, I think, and then or something, and then it's a very informal session. So what we're going to do after is that you're going to tell us what do you think, what are the problems, what should we talk about, etc. So the first sort of problem, in my opinion, I'm not going to give you solutions, I'm just going to talk about problems, is, as I sort of alluded to, is the consumability and reproducibility of research in industrial setting. When something comes out of academia or even research labs in industry, is in a majority of cases completely useless, because the code is completely a spaghetti, impossible to understand in a lot of cases. The data set is not available. What they wrote in the paper is probably a bunch of mumbo jumbo that is difficult to understand. It's very rare to see something that you can immediately grab and use, and that's a big problem. And I think part of this big problem is coming from the fact that those who are doing the research part are not really thinking about the downstream consumers of that, and the fact that there is disconnect means that they're producing stuff that are not really user-centric. So that's the first problem. The second is that when we talk about machine learning and data science, a lot of the time our scope as machine learning practitioners is like very, very limited to the modeling part. Like we feel offended if anyone tells us, do this data engineering pipeline, and we're like, oh my God, like what are you talking about? And that's bad, because from a stakeholder point of view, they don't care about, you're using deep learning or whatever. They care about a solution, because they have a business problem and they want a solution to it. So we rarely, or even people who are around us, project managers, product managers in some cases, other types of stakeholders, they don't really think about, okay, what is the solution? What is the solution architecture, etc. The next one is access to the right team. So a lot of the time you're doing, data science and machine learning in industrial setting for the wrong reasons. Like, a lot of the time I talk to stakeholders that say, I want to do NLP. And I'm like, really? Like, for what purpose? Like, what are you trying to do? Like, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? And that type of mindset also exists in the technical teams, because a lot of them are thinking, you want to have data science teams, but why? Like, what are you trying to solve? And a lot of the time, a big mistake that, like, a lot of job seekers talk to me, and one of the things that I say is that if they don't have data engineers and software engineers and architects and a lot of these roles, and the first person they're hiring is a data scientist, your life is going to be miserable there as a data scientist. Because most probably they haven't thought about it. They're just thinking, data science is cool. We have AI in our pitch deck, therefore we have to have AI, or even in corporates, like that's the same, because corporates are not, they're like many different teams. If you're entering a corporate function where, there are a lot of business people, probably some people who can do Tableau, and then you're the first data scientist, you kind of can guess that you will be creating PowerPoint decks. You won't be creating anything that is, going to impact the business workflow. And the product mindset, which is kind of related to the end-to-end solution, because when you think about machine learning and data science as a tool that you're going to sort of do one-off solutions, a lot of the time you're not thinking about, okay, I'm solving this problem, but how can I step back and think about this problem as something that many other people have, and how can I build a solution that addresses all of these problems? How can I think about reusability, scalability? How can I build something that can be easily, stacked in different ways to solve a slightly different problem? A lot of the time we are like, let's go very, very deep in this thing and customize it very, very deep, which means that we are not following the software engineering best practices and all of those good things, simply because we are not thinking about the end product. We are not thinking about building a solution for the business. We just want to do the cool part and just throw it over to some other poor souls to take it forward. And a big part of the product mindset is design thinking and thinking about the end user. Like thinking about, a lot of the time, when I talk to my team, they're asking, should I use XGBoost or deep learning? And I'm like, I don't know. What does the end user want? Like what kind of SLA are they looking for? What kind of experience are they looking for? And that defines, that limits what you can use quite a bit. So a lot of the time, the questions are even wrong because the mindset is wrong. The mindset is not, I'm solving a solution for this particular group of users. And finally, if you're starting to think about product and trying to solve problems for many users, then you have to talk about, what is the performance of this thing that I'm doing? Like, is it responding on a time scale that the user is looking for? Is it scalable enough that instead of, serving these 5 people, I can serve, 100,000 people, and things like that? That again, like, comes from, that right mindset at the beginning and architecting your solution in a proper way that can support what you're trying to do at the end. Anyway, these are a bunch of ideas that I throw out. Oh, I have one more? Sorry. I thought there were 5. Okay, sorry. Right. So this one is huge. Holy moly. and I wanted to see which of you knew it. And no? Okay, sorry, I completely forgot that. I'm tired, okay? Okay, so this one is huge because a lot of the time we're dealing with machine learning in the context of existing business. It is not the case that always you're building machine learning as a new company or a new product or whatever. You're building machine learning that is a tiny component of a ginormous system that the majority of it is legacy systems. They're like a lot of IBM components, a lot of, Microsoft, whatever. These are all pieced together. It is mainframes and, geez, I don't know what even these things are, but, that's part. And not only the technology side, the process side, the people side, all of these are legacy. Like their mindset is all about waterfall and everything that they've been doing for the past several decades. And now you're coming in as a young person and you're like, I want to change the business workflow. And they're like, who the F are you? Can we cut that off? No, that's not a joke. Right, so essentially you're introducing something completely new in a process that is completely established. They're doing just fine without you. And now you're this kid who comes forward and says, I want to change the process. So it's a very difficult conversation because, even if they want to change it, a lot of the time they're not ready for it. Because, you might build a Lamborghini engine, but if the rest of it is not Lamborghini, it's going to suck. It's not going to work. It's going to be useless. You just have to put it in the shelf. And that's the case with this last problem. Like people, processes, and technology has a lot of components that are legacy. And now you have to come in and build something that, sort of slowly changes all of it, but at least at the beginning does something that helps the business slightly. With that, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to pass it on to my good friend Geoffrey. That's not me, that's him.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice. This is good enough height. All right, I'm gonna steal this. Do I need this attached? Okay. All right. Woohoo! There we go. There, move it closer here. There, my giant clicker. There we go. So thank you, Amir, and ACE organizers for making a lot of noise and inviting me here. And so before I begin, just a quick show of hands. How many of you identify as data scientists? Okay. How many of you as data engineers? How many of you as designers? Ooh, all right. They're still there. Product owners or product managers? All right, there are more product people than, okay, all right, that's good. And then how many of you did I not label correctly? Okay, okay, all right. I want to know what the other is in this category. Anyway, so a little bit about myself, and then I'll get into more interesting stuff. Right now, I lead the data science team at a company called Uberflip. We're a content marketing company, and the marketers are going to hate me for this, but basically, just think of what we're doing at Uberflip as building a giant recommender system with multiple ingestion and endpoints. Boom, there you go. That's a data science explanation. We have our major conference going on. The marketers will hate me for saying that, so don't show this too soon. Yeah, it's all. Whoops. All right. All right. There you go. So before this, I was in consulting, both for like the big guys like Deloitte, but also doing my own smaller kind of stuff on the side. And the reason why I'm moving back and forth like this is so I can get the average of the audience over there. So just for you to think I'm kind of even weirder. And back in my consulting days, this was quite often kind of the high-level framework that I would use to facilitate the initial discussions with clients around, what is data science, what is AI, what can it do for me, all this kind of stuff. And I said, really, you have to know that you're on a journey. And everyone's like, okay, we like journeys. And you can't start in the middle or at the end, because I know that's where you want to be, but you can't just start there arbitrarily. You can kind of, test it and see an experiment if you want to, but you can't just start there and go, look, we made it to the end of the journey, because you didn't start at the beginning. The whole notion of a journey is that you have to go from point A to point B. And so an AI journey really begins with the right strategy. What are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? Why is it important to this business, this company, this industry? And then we have to get our data ready. And of course, we can get stuck doing this for ages. And then we work on some bespoke solutions, i.e. usually dashboards are the first things out. But there might be some lighter predictive models, some report augmentation with some analysis. And then we get to production solutions, i.e. the subject of today's talk. And then the higher level ethereal is this automated decision making. Now, again, people just want to start with the end and say we arrived. And so AI maturity should mostly go this way, maybe skip a little bit and go back. But AI reality is usually I'm going to start with something, I'm going to start predicting something. And so I'm going to hire a bunch of data scientists. Oops. And so they're just going to do amazing things. I'm just going to hire a whole bunch of them, and they're going to predict a bunch of stuff about my company and my business. This is a whole part of our AI transformation. It's great and wonderful. And they're going to make me a bunch of production solutions. But then reality kind of sets in, and all of a sudden the production solutions don't really materialize because, well, maybe it worked on my computer, but not yours. Maybe because the infrastructure, I need cloud. What's cloud? Okay, well, there's the end of that conversation. Or maybe IT just gave me access to the data just once, but to production solution, I need all continuous access to the data. And they're like, whoa, there's a whole different risk profile. Oh my God, breaks. So there's all kinds of reasons why this production solution never really materializes. And of course, the data scientist, whether you're kind of starting off as one or as a team of data scientists, you're struggling because you're supposed to do this thing called data science innovation AI. And then all of a sudden you can't, at least the way that the business users want you to. So then there's some kind of coming to terms. And it's like, okay, we need to have a strategy. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? Because our data science team is kind of complaining that they can and can't do certain things, and some stuff needs to get ready for them to actually do stuff. And then so usually there's some kind of data readiness. It's like, okay, finally, we can get access to a little bit more data, a little bit more standardized, hire some data engineers too. And then we do a nice little iteration because we're agile, and we make a bespoke solution. This is important. And then in the spirit of Agile, unfortunately, you go back because you just got feedback. And then this is the problem that emerges. And I call this dashboard hell. Usually what it looks like from the data science team is a bunch of people are coming at you saying, can I please have some data? Okay, a little bit more data. I just need a little bit more and more. And or, can you help me build a dashboard? Because the data is just so big, it's so complicated, I can't analyze it. So I just need a dashboard. Oh, and when you're finished that one, can you add this and add this and add this? And it never ends because of this vicious dashboard hell spiral. And so how do we get out of this? Because AI envy kicks in your data science team. All your LinkedIn friends on Google, they will brag about the production solutions that they're pushing and all the transformation stuff and all the real AI. And you try your best to go at it, but you kept on getting pushed back by recruiters by saying, no, you only build dashboards. You haven't really done data science. And so AI envy kicks in. So how do we get out of this one? So wall of text, there we go. So I'm a data scientist fundamentally. I don't like dashboards. I hope the mic's not too sensitive. And so I don't wake up in the morning going, yes, dashboards. But I do wake up going, okay, we're getting there. Because dashboards are the beginning of where data science begins, where we can actually start doing something data sciencey. And I tell my team this, and they're like, okay, I'll believe you for a little bit. Because what does it take to build a dashboard? Now, assuming it's built correctly, we didn't skip too many steps. Usually, the data is there. You have permission to access it, so some IT and security and all that kind of stuff is done. There's at least an understanding that the data and related insights will be shared with the broader organization, i.e. more than just you. And hopefully that there's some kind of continuous data pipeline that serves new refresh to the data, whether it's once every 5 minutes or 3 hours or whatnot. So a lot of the infrastructure necessary to start thinking in a production kind of sense is there when a dashboard arrives, assuming the dashboard doesn't only run on your computer. And so that's why, as a data scientist, why it's exciting for me. But again, to get out of this vicious spiral of dashboard hell, how do we do that? And so the perspective I like to have is, as Amir said, one of the biggest challenges is the legacy aspect of things. Fundamentally, data science teams, we're the new kids on the block. We think differently. We just, I don't care what team you're part of. I just need your data. Whew. Everyone's a number to me. I'm okay admitting that. But other teams just don't think that way. And how we like to mash data together and just build really big questionable tables that will make engineering teams go nuts, we're okay with doing that because we need to do that as data scientists. And so, so we think and do things differently. And so with dashboards, I always like to use them. If someone says, okay, I need data or a dashboard, I go, okay, let's just, help me understand the problem a little bit more. Sure, I can get you the data really quickly, but I want to learn from this experience as a data scientist. So in this process, I'm kind of ignoring the data scientist in me, i.e. the thing personality that wants to do the machine learning, and I'm putting more of my product owner hat on, unbeknownst to them. And so when they come in asking for dashboards, I cross my fingers and I say, I want to build this thing as fast as possible so that we can get to the content that really matters to me, my career, but also what I think matters to the industry. Because I got to catch up with my friends at Google. And so when we sit in a room together, when I first joined Uberflip, again, people say, give me data, dashboards, and it would take us over 3 weeks to even kind of get some kind of initial data being stitched together, some validation, did we do it the right way, et cetera, et cetera. We have a lot of data, it's all over the place. And so it was really hard, and it was so time consuming. And so now we're at a stage where it takes about half an hour to do that. Because from infrastructure point of view, we've invested in some of the tooling necessary, and I don't want to be all salesy, but if you want to know more of the technologies, there's basically kind of our tech stack that we've purchased for ourselves. to get our stuff done. And yeah, anyway, even though there's another engineering team, they have their tech stack, we have our tech stack, and we kind of agree and disagree on certain things. So now dashboards really just take about a half an hour to do. So what do you do with the rest of your 24 hours? Well, you use that as an opportunity to lead a conversation and say, okay, stitch together that dashboard and go, okay, great, here's what dashboard is. And then the temptation there is to call the meeting to an end and just leave. But while you have them, you make it an hour-long meeting, maybe an hour and a half. And then when you show them the dashboard with all the various widgets, you go, okay, does this answer your question? And then it kind of challenges them initially because usually they're hyper-focused on, get me that dashboard, get me that data. And okay, now I have that dashboard, meeting's over, I gotta go now. But when you show them the data, it's like, oh, now I see the data for the first time. And that's the fun thing with all this stuff, is that we can think and plan as much as we want ahead of time, but no one fundamentally has really seen the data, especially the business users. And so this is the first time that they're actually seeing it. So then you pause, you go, are you able to answer the question that you originally wanted to answer at the beginning of this exercise? And so then they start to think about was this actually a good, useful exercise? In general, it is, but not for the reasons why they expect. And then even asking them things like evaluating the impact of this. How is this going to change? How is this answer going to change your team tomorrow? I don't ask how is it going to change you tomorrow. I don't care about them. I care about the broader team, the business, the organization, the industry. So the wording is really important here. If they just go, well, I can report to my CEO more vanity metrics, I'm like, congratulations, this is just a one-off thing and I'm gone. But if it's something like, oh my God, my team has never seen this before, we've always wanted, we've craved it, oh, more, more, more. I'm like, okay, that's a better sign. And then a very leading question, how much time do you want to spend reviewing dashboards to analyze the insights in there? They usually don't really think about that. They just think, oh, I'm going to load up the dashboard and go, oh, of course, I need to go left or right or keep going straight. Because really, a dashboard that's well designed, you got to slice and dice and kind of take what you want from it. And usually people don't want to arrive at 9 o'clock and go, oh, I need some dashboard time. I can't do meetings right now. And I'm going to load up that dashboard, slice and dice, and stitch together that story that I want to tell the CEO and go, okay, whew, here we go. And so it's a leading question because they didn't really think about their own maintenance of this dashboard. Because if it's a dashboard, I still have to maintain it as a data science team. We still have to host it and data pipelines, all the engineering feats that are needed. We still need to exercise all that. But they need to exercise a lot of due diligence on their end to make sure that are you still using this dashboard? If not, then okay, that was a fun conversation. Let's focus on some overarching things that are perhaps more important. And basically, what kind of analysis have you done in the past? Have you even seen the data before? I love asking that question because usually people they haven't seen the data before. So this is really a moment of empathy for everyone in that room to say, really, no one has seen this data before. So this is fundamentally new for everyone right now. So let's kind of take a moment and go really reflect. This is why you won't get those immediate answers all the time. And then the questions to avoid. Don't have them solution anything. I know there might be some frustration, I just want to just get this dashboard out of the way and move on to sexier, more important things. Yes, I have that need too. But a lot of this stuff is, because people haven't seen the data before, they haven't really thought the way we think about data. It is our expertise to do the solutioning for them, but it is their expertise to provide us with that business context. I work with a lot of marketers. I'm not a marketer. But it is the way it is, and I go to them for marketing insights. I go to our sales team for sales insights. I go to our customer success team for customer success kinds of things. So they are the business experts, but I am the data expert. So I'm not going to say, well, how do you measure this, and how do you want to do that, and join the table? No. That is something I need to take away once I understand their general intent and objective with whatever solution it is. And so this approach I find is useful for, it won't let you skip over dashboard hell, because again, it's a journey. You have to go through it still. It will always be there, it will always be present, so hire a dedicated resource in the longer term to get past that. But hopefully this kind of framework and discussion can help you lead a dashboard discussion, but also get to the content that we are really want to do in our careers, but it will also benefit the companies. And that's really the little kind of nugget I have. I don't know if, Amir, you want to take over from here or more or less open the floor and do more facilitate discussion.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take this microphone.
Okay.
So I'm going to come sit here. I'm going to pretend to be important and wait for you to ask questions. Okay, I can start if you want.
Or do you want to just do more of a pry thing? We didn't coordinate this ahead of time.
Yeah,
I have my own ideas, and he doesn't know that right now.
So essentially, the plan going forward is to have an open discussion. So you're going to drive the majority of it, but whenever you don't ask questions, I'll ask questions if I can think of anything. So I'll do the okay. There you go.
Yeah, so I've actually recently been playing. I have no background data science. I'm an engineer, so I build web applications and things like that. But what I found useful is just go on IBM Watson or Azure or AWS, and they have services, consumable APIs, where you can actually build pretty cool functionality. For example, sentiment analysis or voice recognition, things like that. So I'm saying, what is the role of these big giants in your model or consulting, right? Because I think it solves one of your problems, what are relevant things in the AI industry, and those are basically what's captured in the API in Azure, for example. So I mean, I would just leverage Azure, see whatever API they publish, that is that's what's relevant.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll try a brief answer, and then I'll ask Geoffrey to share his thought. And everyone else should also feel free to speak up. This is an open floor and an interactive session, hopefully. So you're absolutely right. For probably 80% of problems, you can do that. You can easily grab something off the shelf. You can grab scikit-learn packages in Python and whatever. And that's great. But what if you want to go beyond that? What if there's nothing off the shelf? You have to code the algorithm yourself, right? So what if I consume all the easy low-hanging fruits, which are easy classifiers and clusterings and whatever, right? And now the business is at a point that they're oh, only if I could do this extra step, right? So that's the point. And if you're not at that point, most probably you still can use all of the usual stuff.
Yeah.
But most of the time, if the data science is mature enough, you're at a point that you really need to take a step outside of what's available on the shelf.
Oh, that makes sense. Thanks.
There's a thought over there.
Yeah, I actually have an alternative answer. In my experience, I'd say 80-90% of the time, the solution is I'll approach it from a different point of view, not to contradict that much, but in many cases, when the data science team is not mature, that doesn't mean that you can just grab a solution off the shelf, because the people that you're talking to don't necessarily know what's available. So they won't come to you with questions like, oh, I want a classification problem which involves scikit-learn or data IP or anything of the sort. They'll come to you with, oh, I want personalization on my website. Or, oh, I want to use advanced AI. Or, oh, I want to use cognizant AI. Or I want to just use deep learning. So you just, and then all of a sudden the problem stops being a data engineering or a development problem. It turns into a communication problem. So that happened to me a lot. So then you have to just, it's a communication problem. You just have to keep talking to them until you understand what they're really trying to do, and hope that there is some sort of solution available that would fix that. So that's my answer.
Concern was more how do you know, for example, what you were saying was you're going to build a platform to read all the papers or market all these papers or rate these papers so you know what's useful and what's not. What I'm saying is you have big companies like Azure and Microsoft, they're already telling you what's useful or not. And because people are paying them, you know that those APIs are worth the investment. So I'm saying what is the value of building to a platform like this? Versus data. Huh? So it would have to be very niche, right? It would be very, very specific. So you would have to rule everything out, everything that,
Are So my comment towards that is it really depends on I think two factors that I think of. One, what's the cost to build versus buy?
Yeah.
Well, how much is it going to cost you to maintain just using Google services versus yeah. The other one is the data. Do you own the data, and are you willing to ship it off to Google?
Sure.
In an environment, a lot of environments now is data privacy. I don't want my data going outside of Canada. I don't want my data going out to a third-party company. And so those things come into play as well as are you allowed to send your data out to third-party services?
That's a good answer. Thanks. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I had another comment about the the conventional, you have the AWS versus Google, all of them have their own APIs, right? Problem I think that comes up is many of the metrics that they use in natural language inference, for example, they have their own internal metrics that are black boxes. We don't know what they're doing under the hood. Now, it may not matter initially, but as you go further down, you want to know a little bit more about what how up to date those metrics are. Are they suitable for the problem you're trying to solve?
Well,
And
that's because you wouldn't choose the API if it wasn't solving your problem.
well, yeah. So
I'm talking about the specific working with an API that you feed the data.
Agreed. So
you basically work with the documentation.
Right.
So if you have something that the API doesn't resolve for you, then you obviously can't use it.
many times it's not clear what it does or does not resolve, because, for example, Google's natural language API is completely black box. You don't know what they're doing to even predict a sentiment value.
I would disagree with that because they have very good documentation on what you can expect, and you can feed in data and look at the data in response and if it makes sense to you. But again, I think this is an issue where if only you have a niche that you know and you have a data privacy issue, then you should build on your own if you have this intellect with people who can actually build custom things.
It's more than that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it all depends on what stage you are.
What do you mean?
It's all about the quality of the answer you want, right? The quality of the answer with the Google public API is going to be limited. So if you're very early stage, it makes sense because you don't need to be extremely good answer. If it's kind of okay, okay. But as you grow as an organization, customers expect more precise answers.
Yeah.
That's not going to be possible. Google is not going to do anything for you, right? So you have
exactly.
to do
You
it
have
for
to
something.
identify
So
use
that's
case.
really
So
really
can I suggest something? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but I feel like that's becoming too narrow and specific. Can we, let's keep the conversation on higher level. Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Ike. So I have a couple of, so there are a lot of really interesting points that you guys raised, and most of them you don't see this being talked about, not least we have traction data science, and in a lot of organizations, the way data science, a lot of data science operate is, like in their own little silo, they build their models once it's done, they throw it over the fence, the data engineer takes it, scale, do what it needs to do, pass it to the DevOps guy to get it in production. Then it gets into the product and essentially goes down the pipeline. And then the data scientists there, they don't, they sort of lose visibility into how they're, essentially what that path is. And so basically, there are a lot of things you actually said earlier in terms of being able to, you're not, when you try and do AI, it's ML, right? It's typically not in isolation, right? You're doing it to solve some sort of problem downrange that someone has, right? And so basically, to be able to do that, you need infrastructure. And so it's and now you need infrastructure, you need to stand up all these systems to actually make this possible, to get this into the product. And something I feel like we don't really talk about as a community is borrowing a lot of really interesting things that have actually happened in software engineering and bringing those actually into data science. Being able to basically build reproducible model, build an environment that's reproducible, being able to build things that are modular. You can just take it out, plug and play. And some of those you don't really hear a lot about that. And even down the line, a lot of what you can do with your models essentially depends on what your infrastructure looks like. If you're trying to get maybe 20 milliseconds inference SLA, and your model is doing inference at 2 seconds, obviously that's not going to work. And what you can do kind of depends on what sort of infrastructure you have. So I'm really curious to see what people's thoughts are about that, especially borrowing some of the really interesting things from software engineering, and then kind of thinking about how we sort of do data science in a much more not really structured, but then borrowing a lot of the things that other actors have done as well.
I'll provide my insight again and pass it on to the floor if anyone has any ideas. I agree 100%. So I have this good friend, Amir. He he likes to talk about this concept of minimum viable machinery, which is very similar to minimum viable product. But essentially, he likes to talk about you're trying to solve this problem X, and it has these business implications and it has this solution Y. And in order to do that, build the most basic thing that you can. Most probably, it will be some sort of rule-based system. It doesn't necessarily even have machine learning in it, but it solves some sort of business problem. And what that achieves is that it gives you, a starting point, a baseline, something that you can start collecting the data you don't have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's essentially a software product that's, based on everything that you just described, right? You have to follow, set up the right infrastructure, set up the right architecture, set up the right processes that you need, et cetera, and then, start thinking about where does this fail and why do I need to add machine learning to it? Why do I need to add more complex? And that's, the opposite of how we usually think about it. Usually we think there's this business problem, oh, there's this machine learning solution. And there's nothing about, what is the end-to-end solution? Anyone else? There was a question in the corner.
So so we have the same product as Overflip, so I know like this Unfortunately, I didn't have your experience, or I'm not as smart as you, so it took me 5 years to find out like about this dashboard help. So I know that like all
in there. It's all
yeah. I know like. I took the reverse path, so we developed all these machine learning algorithms to help them, the marketers, and then there was this resistance that like these marketers, they didn't trust us and they didn't want to use the software because like there was this assumption that we are going to use these algorithms to replace them. So it was a very huge fight between us and them, and then the management to we forced them to use them. They didn't accept it. But at the end of the day, after 5 years, I figured out like, okay, you win. I sit with them, and then I told them like, how can I serve you? And then the conversation was like, okay, we need a dashboard. And then that's when I set the dashboard as a bait to just bring them on a table and then start the conversation. And now they're more willing to use all those algorithms because we have the same ground, which is that dashboard.
And I was, part of the benefit, one of the other derivative benefits of dashboards is they help with explainability. And at any point, someone's like, well, I don't believe in this machine learning stuff. I say, well, just look at the dashboard. And the only thing that we're automating is essentially this logic. But we're using kind of a unique tool set to do it instead of an explicit rules-based solution. And I think a lot of this kind of discussion also fits in with kind of Amir's legacy remark is that data science teams were the new guys at the table. If the thought were to go out to fire a marketing team or a sales team or an engineering team, like everyone would be like up in arms. What do you mean? Fire a data science team? Okay, I can work with that. Because data science teams are so new at the table. How do we work and interact with all these other teams? So I find one of the best ways of solving that problem is with a handshake. I went up to our CTO and I said, it is our goal to meet and exceed engineering standards. And he was like, oh, okay. I guess he was like expecting to fight me on something. I was like, okay, great, go ahead. I'm like, okay, whew, that was easy. The sales team, I said, I want to help you close deals and assess our market penetration. And they're like, oh, okay, well, roll up in a chair, sit down, and those kinds of things. So when it comes to data science is really, really hard in and of itself. So beg, borrow, steal, and use as much resources that you already have across the company. So software development is by and large a solved problem by engineers. So just steal what they have and incorporate it into your workflow. But you have to modify for data science kinds of things. Assessing how do you storytell. We'll go to your marketing team to help storytell your ROI as a data science team. How do you sell something? We'll go to the sales team. And so really learn from all this institutional expertise and then just use whatever you need in your own team, and to really anchor your team as a legitimate team that, oh my God, if everyone says fire the data science team, it would be, oh my God, that's unheard of. And so really shake as many hands as you can, especially with IT, because usually they hold the keys. But across the organization, as you need help, it isn't just you as the data scientist or as a team or whatever, and this is part of that end-to-end capability that needs to be part of a data science team, not just a bunch of data scientists and go figure it out. And so as either you're part or building your own team, think about the core capability you need to deliver your core ROI, but also beg, borrow, steal from all your business units too.
So I was just thinking, like sometimes when I was working at a company, there was a developer who made a bad mistake in an API, and there was a company, and we lost millions of dollars actually because just the production website went down and hundreds of thousands of dollars per second. I'm thinking, like, for you, it's not if there's a bug in the data model or something, like, or you present the wrong information dashboard and the CEO makes a wrong decision. Like, is there a flow to capture this thing? Like, how accurate is the data? Are there bugs? And like, how does that work?
Basically, short answer, data governance, model governance. There you go, yeah.
Just to that point, I don't think it's usually bugs or anything like that. It's 90% of the time with our clients, what we find is that it's mostly concept drift that leads to these things. So let's take, for example, a fintech company doing a product recommendation model for credit cards. They have 3 credit cards, and they build a model to recommend one of the 3. 5 months later, business changes, and now there's a 4th credit card. Right? The model has no idea. Right? So concept drift happens all the time. Right? And there are tools, including my company, who builds and manages those things.
Okay.
I want to bring the conversation to another interesting aspect that I think exists here. How many people are from medium to large size companies here? Okay.
Does that include large size? Like
medium to.
Sorry, mathematician.
And who's here, like from startups to small companies? Okay, so you guys don't understand this part, but so I guess that's a question for Geoffrey, but also others. So in big companies, corporates, one of the problems that occurs very often is there are many layers of politics and management between where the technology pillar potentially is and where the end user is, and that usually creates a big problem in the narrative that I said that, when you're building a solution, it is for an end user, you have to talk to them, But in reality, there are so many layers between you and them, and these layers are not necessarily incentivized to let you directly talk to them. So, why are you laughing, son? Anyway, so I'm curious, if anyone has, like, those who work in bigger companies, in smaller companies, I don't think that happens, but maybe I'm wrong. But I'm curious if, do you have experiences similar to that? How do you navigate it for you as well? Just generally thoughts about that.
I have a case. So we worked. I work at a startup, but we serve larger clients. So we have to work with them all the time. And in one of these larger clients, they have fraud detection models. And fraud detection is actually incredibly tough because even a 1% reduction in the accuracy of the model, and that happens over a course of, say, a year, that reduces the amount of that boils down to about $10 million of revenue loss for that specific company. Right, so it's an incredible problem, and the way we get around it is data governance and things like that, right? But it's building out the same kind of concepts that we have for software engineering, but also for data science. It's having the same kind of monitoring tools. It's having the ability to have PagerDuty integration, even for your models, right? Things like that. That have been allowing us to make sure that there is no concept drift as things go along.
So are you talking about the previous conversation or?
Yeah.
This one, right?
Okay. Anyway, any other? Yeah, there is a concept.
You mentioned there's like a big gap between the end user and the data science team. So in large corporates, have you found like the innovation team and that department to be a useful plug to that gap?
No, it's great.
It sounds like that. Isn't that like their MOs to come with the problem to the data science team?
on paper or
In practice or in theory?
I can probably provide some input into that. So I'm part of Accenture strategy practice. I work with a lot of large corporations, helping them set up, like redesign their strategy for like their product development, as well as their operating models. So for instance, how the technology works together, how do you actually introduce data science or machine learning into their teams? And so my observation of what I've been looking at kind of in the industry is that right now corporations aren't set up in that manner from capturing user research as well as like the experimentation phase, although that has been where the trend is going, that now organizations are valuing sort of how do you set up a separate incubator for experimentation, and then also the value of user research. So how do I, wherever I am in my team, ensure that I'm not just working with the same type of people? How do I, if perhaps I'm from the technology, so for instance, like the CIO or the chief, the IT, for instance, the lead of IT will now need to work very closely with the CEO so that everything that they do sort of trickles down towards their corporate strategy. Do I want to increase X consumers, or do I want to enter a new market? Then that needs to be the top question, and every single person down the line needs to ensure that whatever we do, whether it's the type of data that we're spending our time in or the type of dashboards that you're asking me to build, it's like, that's great, we can certainly do that, but is it answering these questions, and is this the best way? As well as, like, how do I create something from scratch that's really sort of like low fidelity? So how can I test it with the business right away? So I'm noticing that those barriers are breaking down in larger corporations. Like, we're still many years away from that happening, but that is sort of the message that the C-suite, C-level board is really trying to push within their corporation.
I may have an unsatisfactory answer to your question. Large corporations and levels of communications, like all of these people. It's a fairly general answer, but I'm in a large corporation. I've been there for a year now. The best answer that I have right now is just keep talking. Ignore the incentives. Just keep talking to everyone. The consumers, all of the stakeholders, suppliers, managers. Just keep talking. And check back with me in 3 years. If I'm homeless, then that was a
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, so I see a couple things. I don't know if it's helping to solve the barrier or making it works, but a couple of things we're doing. One is business teams. We actually hire a lot of data people. So we're actually forming just like shadow IT teams, if you will. Right? That probably doesn't help with the barrier part. But the good thing is these people will know the business and they will know the data as well. They might not have all the infrastructure or things like that, but for simpler problems, we actually don't need to go to IT. You can actually solve it within the business. Also see IT teams hiring more engagement leads with businesses, right? So to try to enhance their relationship with businesses. So once again, these people who understand the business, a lot of them come from business side, right? Who have technical background. Some of them are engineers, some are scientists, but they understand the business. And so it's probably effort on both sides to try to bridge.
Which I think which signifies the sort of an answer to the problem, which is close to this one, which is, well, we don't understand each other's language. Let's try to now understand it, right? So as a kid, I used to work a lot as a data scientist, and for a while we worked with a business that had a data scientist on their side, and I loved it because he was my translator. I was like, this is it, now go explain to them. Because it doesn't take an hour of our session to explain it. It needs hours, maybe perhaps days, for us to be on the. So it's good to have that, and we also do have. So I work at RBC, so that sounds to a surprise. But we also do have business people on our side, and we try to integrate a business right from the get-go into this. So I want to build this cool thing, and there's a bunch of cool things that I want to build. I'll go talk to the business person that we have first, because he's gonna say no, there is no business. That's a great tech, but we're not gonna be able to use this. And I usually trust that we won't.
just a different dimension maybe of the same thing. Currently working with a large pension fund, helping set up a digital accelerator. Previously done many of these for like big corporations. One thing that always works is ultimately a value creation. If you can tie it to a business case and make it sure that this is not an exercise of intellectual gratification, which often AI projects, as you know, statistically 70 or 80 or even more percentage of AI projects fail as a problem. Because they're all intellectual gratification. It starts with hammer looking for a nail. They hire a bunch of data sets, say, okay, solve this problem, great, and then it dies down there. Ultimately, it has to be tied to a business case. And if it's tied to a business case, then everybody's neck is on the line. You've got to show the money. Either you cut costs or you increase the revenue. If you don't, then you're dead. And then everything suddenly aligns because the sponsor, everyone's head is on, neck is on the line. So things will happen if it's tied to specific dollar numbers.
I want to talk. Sorry, there's one more.
I just wanted to add something to this. The communication problem is, based on my understanding and the number of years I've worked in corporation, is because of the leadership. Leadership doesn't really understand what data science is, and some of the issues that you pointed out in your presentation. And I have seen like in 2 different organizations where the leader understands like how to implement this data science, right? So their communication is much better in that area, and it is much and the people are implementing solutions. They are much more tied to the business cases. But in other organizations, leaders do not really understand. Even one of the executive vice presidents said in one of the meetings was that we are building analytics by asking customers, and there are famous words. Customers do not really know what we can really build for them, right? Just need to show them. So that's one of the things, and then that can help in solving the problem. Right? So education of leaders or the leaders who understand how to implement things. Right?
Cool. So, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to cap it here and say a little bit something else about the work that we're doing with the product stream. So essentially the ambition behind having this meeting is to essentially build empathy from both sides, so both from the business, from the tech, from products, from designers. Every single person that's in a different role, the opportunity is to learn from each other, as well as how to better communicate and sort of push whatever we're trying to deliver in a more effective and efficient manner. So at the end of tonight, I think we're going to send out a survey just to hear your feedback based off of, so we'll give you some time to think about it, but we'd love to hear your feedback on what would be helpful to deliver in the future. So is it more networking sessions, more opportunities to meet other companies, other organizations, more challenges along the product lifecycle? So how do I conduct a lean user research? How do I actually talk to my customer if I don't even know where they are and have no access to them? There's so many different areas, so many different kind of pivot points that we can address that question, and we'd really love to hear from the community. And I'll hand it back to Amir.
I just echo that, and we hopefully will hear back from you. And we were planning to do an icebreaker at the beginning, but there are so many people who showed up that we can't do that. So may I suggest to do a mini version of that? That's Angie's suggestion. So can I suggest, I guess we're going to take a break here and then...
Yeah, we'll end it here and we'll leave you guys to mingle, but essentially the icebreaker that we wanted to do was something where you introduce yourself to somebody that you haven't met, and you don't talk about your role or the company that you work for, but rather something that you found was really funny, something that was really interesting, that you read that was particularly exciting to you. Any stories around what was the funniest thing that made you laugh this week, I would love to personally hear, because that would make my day. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Can I suggest to make it slightly more efficient before people leave?
Yeah.
Just do that with the person that is sitting beside you right now, and then